One of the things that can be so frustrating sometimes is feeling like you need the approval of someone, but not necessarily getting it. Right? I think that's something that a lot of us struggle with is we want that validation. We want that acceptance. We want that form of encouragement, whether that's our parents, our siblings, our friends, our teachers, bosses, coworkers, colleagues, you name it, even random strangers sometimes. We want that approval or that thumbs up before we make that step forward. And sometimes when we don't receive it, or we don't receive it right away, we question our decision altogether. We become hesitant. We wonder if what we're doing is even really right at all. And sometimes we may not even approach it ever again because we're missing that approval. And the reason I wanted to do a topic on this video is because I look back at my own life and I can count on beyond the 10 fingers on my hands. I can count so many different instances where I was seeking the approval of someone and it felt like it felt like something was holding me back. It was preventing me from living my life and living with authenticity and purpose. And it's something that I had to learn the hard way. But eventually I learned that you don't always need someone's approval. In fact, in many cases, you kind of have to go forward without their approval. And by no means is this me suggesting that, we need to break rules and laws and not ask permission and not get anyone's input and just be a reckless trailblazer that's, going forth in life, without stopping for 1 minute. But what I am saying is that as much as guidance and counsel are important in life, what ultimately matters is what does our gut say? What does our core say? We listen to people all the time. We listen to our thoughts all the time. But how often do we listen to what our heart says? To what intuition says? To what God says? Sometimes we can be so lost in the whole chaos and confusion. And it takes a huge toll on us emotionally when all we have to do sometimes is just block out the noise, quiet our minds, and be open to whatever arises. Sometimes that's the best decision of all. And I'll tell you why sometimes we don't tap into this incredible form of knowledge and guidance. I think because a lot of the times we are not confident in it. We think that we know better. We think that we can engineer something better. And maybe we haven't yet developed as strong of a connection with God to realize that ultimately He is the best form of counsel and guidance. No matter if it's our closest loved one that has seen us from a little baby till now, even they don't truly know us as well as God does. So that's why it's so important that, while I always encourage everyone to take opinions, I also will say to don't be afraid to take that step forward and to make a mistake. It's okay to make a mistake. Now, some people might say, well, why make that mistake when a simple conversation could have prevented you from doing that? Well, everything that's meant to happen will happen. Just because someone else experienced that mistake and has a certain lesson to impart on you doesn't mean that you will learn the same lesson. Maybe for you, it won't be a mistake. If someone buys a house at the height of the housing market and regrets their decision and tells you, you know what, you should not buy because home prices are too expensive, that might not necessarily apply to your situation. Maybe your circumstances might be different. Maybe buying a house for you right now is the best personal and financial decision that you can ever make. So while it's not a bad idea to listen, it is a bad idea to always follow, and certainly to follow without questioning, to follow without discerning, to follow without actually doing the analysis and wondering whether or not this person understands A, my dilemma or my predicament, and B, whether they're truly giving honest and unbiased advice that is intended to help me, rather than just saying whatever is on their mind, rather than trying to manipulate something out of me, etc. Do they truly have my back? And I think that sometimes it's difficult for us to realize that, right? It's difficult for us to understand how much of what someone is saying is good for us and how much of it is bad for us. So rather than taking kind of an all or none approach of either always accepting and following what people say or never following what people think or say, my suggestion is always to take the middle way, to kind of channel Buddha for a moment. Take the middle way. Recognize that there are people who have different life experiences and who have maybe traveled that road in that particular situation or event and that maybe have something to teach you. Recognize and appreciate that, but at the same time, recognize that only you can live your journey. And nowhere is this more important than when it comes to your own spirituality. I talk with a handful of people who maybe similar to like myself, they might have started out from more of a religious perspective and kind of naturally found themselves butting up against the traditional order and butting up against what they have been told is true, but somehow feels kind of hollow inside, feels incomplete inside. And a part of them struggle with just breaking free, getting outside of those boundaries, those man-made boundaries, because they feel like they need some sort of an approval. They need some sort of a validation, whether that's from a person or whether that's from God. There is that sort of hesitancy. But my sort of advice in that situation is to recognize that sometimes you might find yourself in a situation where you feel like you've already reached the ceiling. And the only way to go is to break that ceiling and to go higher, right? At some point, you're going to have to smash that ceiling to go higher. So whether you get the approval of others or not is beside the point. In fact, sometimes the deeper you go, the less people will actually understand what it is that you're trying to do. If you tell someone that I am one with God or I am looking to reunite with God, they might look at you kind of funny. That might be a good reaction. Maybe a bad reaction might be extreme disapproval, judgment, criticism, maybe even a violent act, right? And that's because not everyone truly understands what that means. Not everyone has spent the time really to journey, to go inward, to realize what this life is ultimately about. And so we are constantly met with forms of, not only are we looking to seek approval, but we're also trying to navigate disapproval. And that's also related to this topic. What about the times when we make a decision that is not met with approval by others? Sometimes that hurts more than actually trying to get approval for a decision that we need guidance on or that we need counsel on. For example, if we separate from a partner, maybe our loved ones might question that and be like, well, why did you separate? That person was good for you, yada, yada. But only you truly know the full picture. Only you truly know what's best for you in your life and what you need to do to go forward. So even though there is that sense of disapproval, at the end of the day, you have to feel comfortable with yourself. You have to be comfortable with making decisions and accepting the consequences that come with it. God certainly put other people in our lives to help us with those choices, but at the end of the day, you're the one that's ultimately responsible for your life, not anyone else. So that's a huge element of gaining confidence, gaining independence, and these attributes just aren't for, everyday life. They're actually so important for your spiritual journey. Because really, what is the spiritual journey? Right? I was reading something from Sadhguru the other day. It's not spirituality is not living a quiet, peaceful life. Spirituality is setting yourself on fire. It's not this sort of peaceful, blissful. It is, right? I have to be careful with my words. You do get that, but in order to get that, you also have to walk through fire. You also have to completely change your whole perspective on life. You have to unlearn everything that you've learned. And for many people, this is the equivalent of setting themselves on fire, of becoming a madman, of becoming a lunatic, as some of the ancient poets and mystics describe. So don't be afraid to take the path less taken. In many ways, that's the most beautiful path. I've always found that having a contrarian view resonated with me for some reason. In a lot of aspects of life, I always found that when the crowd goes this way, try to go that way. Because sometimes when you follow the herd, when you follow the crowd, you sometimes lose what it is that is unique to you. You sometimes lose that unique voice that is inside because you're just lost and everyone's just lost. The blind is leading the blind and no one is actually making any decisions for themselves. So I think there's a lot to unpack here, certainly more than I can explain on a particular video. But what I hope you take away from this video is that having the confidence and independence and ultimately the assurance that God is with you on every step of the way is so critical. You cannot truly move forward in life without having these attributes. And even if they take some time to develop, like in my case it did, certainly the aspects of confidence and independence took a while. But even if you're a late bloomer like myself, there will have to come a time where you take off the training wheels. There will have to come a time when you spread your wings and fly. And on that note of flying, it reminds me of something else I read recently about, the bird sitting on the branch. Its faith is not in the branch never breaking. It's faith that when the branch does break, its wings will carry it and enable it to fly. So have that confidence. Have that self-assurance. And if you feel like you are lacking it right now, then maybe that could be because you need to strengthen your connection with God. Maybe that might be that in those times where you are making those difficult decisions, where the need to get someone's approval is so critical and so immediate, maybe you need to interject God in those moments directly instead of after the fact or instead of at another point in time. So see if you can bring all of that together. Because at the end of the day, your ultimate counselor, your ultimate guide is none other than God Himself. And what better way to experience that, to tap into that, than by connecting with your own true self, connecting with the deepest and most authentic part of you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it inspired you in some respects to take that decision, whatever it may be. whether it's moving across the world or settling down with a partner or going on a crazy adventure or even something as simple as wanting to read a book, making time to read a book. Do these things. Don't wait for someone to tell you that you need to do them. Take initiative. Take charge of your own life. Because believe it or not, once you take the first step, as Rumi says, the path will appear, the way will appear. Everything will come into play, but it's all a matter of you taking that first step. The spiritual world is not meant for timid and shy folk that just sit around and hope for something to happen. The spiritual world is meant for those who move with purpose. They may not always move with haste. They may not be the quickest or the fastest or the strongest, but they're the most determined. They're the ones with the most resolve, and they're the ones that are the most consistent, doing a little and a little and a little each day until eventually all of those tiny, tiny little efforts add up to something big and meaningful. So I wish you incredible success on this journey, incredible joy and bliss. If you liked the video, please take some time to drop a like and to share your thoughts in the comments. Also, feel free to take a look around at some of the other videos on the channel. As some of you know, I'm always creating new content, new topics, trying to find topics that are relevant and exciting, but also maybe some topics that aren't as addressed frequently, especially in the spiritual world, like this one, which is the importance of having your own self-assurance and having your own mechanism for self-approval. So with that, thank you again for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day and week ahead, and I look forward to seeing you next time.